The year is 1998 and the real-time strategy game that will change the genre forever has just been released. It quickly became another massive hit for Blizzard Entertainment after the already well-established and remarkable Warcraft 2 and Diablo games. StarCraft managed to sell more than 1.5 million copies in its first 9 months, as it took the crown of the most popular game of the year. Yet now hardly anyone plays or even talks about it anymore. It has only a tiny little fraction of the viewers on Twitch it once mustered. Even the company that created it no longer associates its marketing with it. Why Blizzard itself had forgotten it has an IP called StarCraft. What caused that? How it happened? Why in such an ugly and disrespectful manner towards its own past work? Before we dive deeply into answering those questions, let's look at the core gameplay and what made StarCraft unique for its time. The game being balanced enough to allow for competition, but with asymmetric, as Blizzard likes to call its design choice, the playable races are very different from each other, each race having its own vibe, style and characteristics attached to it. All those in a game destined to become a viral electronic sport in a mid-sized Asian country.
Two Scourge here, Saxtree with the sweet micro pulling away from the Scourge. Oh, good assassinate on that one Muta.
The game is set approximately 500 years from now into a futuristic environment, where 3 distinct races battle for control over a distant sector of the galaxy. Everyone can easily draw the similarities between the movies such as Starship Troopers, Alien, Predator, and the Stargate franchises, and with the StarCraft universe. The Terran race, for example, is a blend between Starship Troopers and outlaw cowboys.
You want a piece of me, boy?
Portraying characteristics such as being rugged, adaptable, and equipped with advanced yet often brute force military technology. They were conceived as the opposite to the uptight, polished, unified human race of most science fiction stories back then. The Zerg race, being described as a hive-minded insectoid species, drew closer to xenomorphs from the Alien movies, as well as arachnids from the Starship Troopers, defined by their biological evolution, constant adaptability, and the ability to mutate to counter threats. Their units are fast, numerous, and often disposable, emphasizing swarm tactics and overwhelming force. When it came to the Protoss race, the co-founder of Blizzard Entertainment, Alan Adam, explained in a recent interview that the Roswell aliens, more commonly referred as the Greys, had influenced them in creating the race.
StarCraft high science fiction with space marines and bugs, and you can look at those as common tropes. Most people don't know that the Protoss are actually partially derived from the Roswell aliens. And so now we put our spin on them, but the big-eyed telepaths, with no mouth, right?
In addition, one could easily see that Protoss was heavily modeled after 1995 Stargate series. The Nexus is similar to Ra's mothership, and the gold design, shape, feel of the Zealot bears similarities with some alien races from the show. On top of all that, adding the Predator movies, their advanced technology, honor-bound warrior culture, and physical prowess. Both races value martial skill and have a code of honor that guides their actions. With all this in mind, we get a lot of the puzzle pieces that Blizzard used in order to create their unique and special races. StarCraft became a pillar to the future of eSports. It gave birth to its mainstream popularity. It all began in South Korea. The well-established, as of now, mecca of esports. Koreans accepted the game as a national digital arena playground where they could test their strategies and skills to determine the best player. Fame and glory awaited those who managed to get to the top. Many young players would train as hard or even harder than traditional athletes, between 8 to 12 hours a day, grinding games non-stop with one goal in mind: becoming the next champion.
일단 11시에 기상을 해요. 일단 기상을 해서 씻고 하고 밥을 먹고 2시부터 본격적으로 시작을 해서 거의 한 새벽 2시 정도까지는 이렇게 계속 하는 것 같아요. 12시간 이상씩은 보통 하고 있어요.
If you had told all this to folks at Blizzard that on the day they shipped StarCraft, that game would be recognized and adopted as a national electronic sport where professional teams of young people would battle for money and fame playing their game, Blizzard would definitely be in full disbelief. More so, 26 years later, StarCraft tournaments are still being organized, and the Korean game scene has a healthy enough viewership player base and professionals to sustain itself and live on for now. When the people at Blizzard first went to an eSports event in Korea, they were shocked. They couldn't have imagined such a reality could take place. The scene only grew from early 2000s to 2009 as more and more people were invested into playing and watching StarCraft and computer games as a whole. We now know how significant and monumental role StarCraft played in forming the Korean esports scene.
This is something I want people that are fans of StarCraft to understand, because I didn't know this till I moved out here and really started working in the industry, but I am a little bit stunned that there are this many StarCraft 1 fans that don't seem to understand what happened and why it matters so much, and also how bad it was for StarCraft 1 and impacted esports and impacted StarCraft 2. Everything that we are at in esports now is kind of rippling from this. You got to understand, StarCraft 1 was put on Korean TV illegally. It's IP theft. It's intellectual property theft. And I've worked with Blizzard for over a decade, right? I was talking to the Blizzard people back, like, and they always wanted to, they liked esports, they wanted to collaborate, but the Koreans locked them out and also were very cagey with the pro gamers. I think there's a universe where, had they collaborated with Blizzard and worked with them legally, there's a reality StarCraft Brood War would have been bigger internationally instead of a weird microcosm that it is in Korea. The Korean scene did a lot to basically insulate themselves and alienate their relationship with the publisher. Blizzard, I think, had they been smarter strategically, they also could have made their own pro leagues and tried to put this on TV in the US and other places as well. When StarCraft 2 came out, none of the StarCraft 1 Korean pros were allowed to play the game in the tournaments like GSL that I was casting, because they didn't want to have anything to do with Blizzard.
However, the game's popularity and attraction wasn't just limited to its competitive side. The other parts of StarCraft also added value and were attracting players with different interests. The campaign story was meant to be the introduction phase as well as the tutorial to the game, going through each race to learn their history and struggles so the player can associate, sympathize, and make a connection with them while learning the game's mechanics, unit interaction, variety of abilities, etc. All these played an important role. The in-game cinematics incorporated in between some missions were the cherry on top. Extremely well crafted, further improved upon the storytelling and game immersion. They looked astonishing for their time as technology wasn't that advanced yet and was a limiting factor to a degree. In addition, many people discovered for StarCraft its community-based and driven mods and custom games. They never truly explored the 1v1 ladder or might have never finished the campaign mission and stories, but grinded a ton of custom game maps, or as old school players know them as UMS, user map settings, such as tower defense, cat and mouse, fastest map possible, 2v2v2 BGH, no noobs, as well as Aeon of Strife, which later on inspired Dota, thus allowing the birth of gaming juggernauts like League of Legends and Dota 2, the creation to a whole new MOBA or action RTS genre of games. All these features combined made the game experience complete and allowed for a variety of players with different interests in gaming to grow and form a big player base. Some players were there only to enjoy certain aspects of the game, be it either custom mods, the campaign story, the 1v1 ladder, for the hardcore enthusiasts, maybe more casual team games, as well as map editors who created multiplayer maps via the game's editor software. Or just stay in Battle.net, chat and talk with people with whom you share the same passion for gaming. All these pieces together are what made StarCraft great. Fast forward 12 years in 2010, the long-anticipated sequel to the StarCraft franchise was born. StarCraft 2 had been long awaited. The success in sales proved the popularity of its predecessor was still there, and Blizzard took advantage of it. StarCraft 2 enrolled on a global eSports crusade, focusing primarily on the competitive side of the game. A global scene where players were competing in tournaments spread all over America, Europe, Australia, and parts of Asia. For a brief period, 2010 to 2012, StarCraft was arguably the most popular and played PC game, undoubtedly the biggest esport. At that time, Dota 2 wasn't released, League of Legends was still gathering momentum, and Counter-Strike was having difficulties. What could have possibly turned the table against StarCraft 2? Even the big now hub for gaming, Twitch, was born initially to host StarCraft 2 games. Yes, the game was that popular. Yet almost nobody is speaking about it anymore. Why is the game forgotten? Even by Blizzard Entertainment, its own creator. With the benefit of hindsight on our side, we could summarize all these questions into one sentence. SC2 Wings of Liberty's release was rushed, unoptimized, unfinished, unpolished, and lacking key features. Blizzard basically sold a game that was still in a beta state, but charged as if it's a complete product. It pains me to say this, but the release of StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty in itself was exactly that, a premature one. The shareholders and executives were feeling orgasmic thanks to sales success milking another Blizzard IP with legendary reputation. The revenue stream from the huge number of sales paid well, I would suppose. On the other hand, a huge chunk of players were deeply unsatisfied as a lot of the features that were already present in original StarCraft Brood War and Warcraft 3 were missing at StarCraft 2's launch. Arcade was a formal shadow of the UMS. Chat channels were not existent on launch day. SC2's editor was too complicated and advanced, aimed more towards programmers than ordinary gaming enthusiasts. The 1v1 ladder was the primary game mode and focus, but it's not fun for the majority of people. For a game to succeed long term, you need to cater to the casuals. They represent the biggest portion, the majority audience, rather than the minority hardcore one. Blizzard had failed at that and was too slow and arrogant to address it properly in a timely manner. Even back in 2012, people were expressing their frustration, but to no avail. A Reddit post from a popular streaming figure back in 2012 describes a lot of the issues that the game was facing, and unfortunately the prediction he made came through. In my opinion, that Reddit post with all the comments was a dark prophecy which Blizzard ignored, and the community paid the price. Ironically, the primary focus of Blizzard was on the multiplayer aspect of the game, and precisely on the 1v1. Yet they still managed to mess that up. Their inability to make a balanced but also fun game became obvious very early on, but continued for years upon years. It's common sense that it's very difficult and almost impossible job to achieve perfect balance between asynchronous game design while maintaining player enjoyment. But some of the more obvious and demanded by the community recommendations and desires took way too long to implement. This ruined the experience for many players, and they had left the game for good. Keep in mind, this all happened while Blizzard was neglecting the key functionality of the other aspects of the game, like arcade or former UMS. The competition wasn't waiting for Blizzard to get their shit together, and League and Dota were getting more and more popular as each year passed, while StarCraft 2 got less and less. Now I will share some bullet points that more or less summarize some of the big problems the game faced during its lifespan. The clumping of units allowed for spells AoE to be too deadly. Match fixing scandals in Korea. Heart of the Swarm's Firecake 2-hour-long Swarmhost games. The free units problem. The boring prolonged matches where nothing is really happening. The excitement factor was lost. This further hurt the game's eSports scene. The 2016 Pro League ending and the slow death of StarCraft 2 in Korea. 2017, StarCraft 2 went free to play. It was a good decision, which unfortunately came a bit too late. 2020, Blizzard Entertainment ceased most of StarCraft 2's paid development and support. At current day, most of the complaints have been addressed, and StarCraft 2 finally feels like a more complete game, but it has been 14 years since its official release date. If I had to pick a year, maybe it would be around 2017, 2018, after it went free to play, that the game was finally more or less finished and polished, which is again a good 7 to 8 years after the initial launch. The problem was that it just took too long for Blizzard to accomplish that. And when they finally managed to do that, they abandoned the game. They had lost a significant chunk of the casuals who went to play other games. Blizzard Entertainment was too slow to implement the necessary updates early enough. Even to this day, the arcade section discoverability is still a downgrade from StarCraft and Warcraft 3 UMS, where you could scroll and see the new hosted maps. StarCraft 2 and RTS games as a whole are difficult and lengthy in time to create and polish, while being not monetizable enough, the risk-reward factor. So they ain't worth the time and effort of a AAA company. As of now, their primary focus is on squeezing the maximum amount of dollars from a gaming IP while keeping the costs at the minimum. The same risk-reward factor which is well understood on Wall Street. The profit margin will be smaller and the risk greater of any modern-day RTS compared to the MOBA FPS alternatives. It's hard to argue with data analytics when a single mount from World of Warcraft made Activision Blizzard more money than the whole StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty game.
Yeah, here's the biggest sadness, dude. I worked 2 years of overtime straight on StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty made less money than the horse, the first Sparkle Pony horse in World of Warcraft.
To some degree, Blizzard's loyal consumers shared the burden as they voted with their wallets and allowed for this trend in gaming to occur. Gaming became a corporate-driven industry with the soulless corporate practices we see in other entertainment industries such as movies, books, TV series, etc. Becoming a mainstream industry, mass-produced digital product, more so manufactured on a tight schedule, limiting the creators' needed time and effort to achieve a good product. The potential to bring out a truly new and revolutionary experience. It's just the same old recycled again. The remastery of old games. Blizzard promotes its 14-year-old expansion of a 20-year-old game as new on their site. Even as a society, we are focused on the cheap and fast, for example the fast food industry, and less on quality. This coincides well with corporate's agenda of large-scale profit with minimal effort and a good risk-reward factor, rather than producing an excellent product that will stand the test of time, that is created out of passion and love for the craft and the investment of much time and effort. Remember that old Blizzard recipe, the game will be released when it's ready? Well, not anymore. If one goes deeper, they would find more and more reasons to why StarCraft 2 is in the state it is now. It is a summary of the decisions and lack of that led to this. At the end of the day, it is obvious that Activision Blizzard were either too slow, incapable, unwilling, or too arrogant to listen to constructive criticism. The company's games were no longer made purely by gamers for gamers, but rather released from a billion-dollar worth corporation to their loyal paying consumers, which would buy any shiny garbage put on their digital shop. The customer or gamer, being the king, didn't fit the narrative anymore. The dumbed down, mindless consumer did. Someone might say that the RTS genre, being a smaller niche, attracts a community that is more intellectual and harder to convert into a mindless consumer and a bit more difficult to please, which apparently ain't worth the effort for Activision Blizzard any longer. The low-hanging fruit is juicy enough. The fate cast upon Blizzard, no king rules forever, applies just as much to them as to their own creations. The legacy of their games is the legacy of the company itself. They go hand in hand. Without its pillars, Activision Blizzard will eventually fall by its own weight of greed and consumerism. And that's how StarCraft 2 lost the crown of gaming. Amon, the evil fallen Xel'Naga, incarnated through Bobby Kotick, had won. It made StarCraft irrelevant. But hold on a minute, let me take a step back. Bobby forgetting about StarCraft, it might actually be good. He didn't manage to ruin the franchise. Looking at how Acti Blizzard were milking the Warcraft franchise and what they did to Diablo, I would argue it is more painful and disrespectful towards the loyal fans of those games than just forgetting the game exists. Because maybe, just maybe, someday in the distant future, the StarCraft franchise may bestow its glory upon us once more, like a phoenix rising from its ashes of irrelevancy, awaiting the return of the RTS king. A man can dream, they say. With that said, passionate people who are responsible for creating those OG masterpieces are still there and are working on new projects. As a kid, I loved building bases and making armies. The difficulty of managing all that has its charm engraved in it. The RTS would never die, but it might transform. It kind of already did with the MOBA genre, but I'm referring to a different transformation. There always lingers a new hope born from the ashes of the last. Warcraft transformed the genre 30 years ago. StarCraft improved upon it and innovated 26 years ago. The standards to which all RTS games to this day abide by. We just need a new one to do the same and it will become successful. Even though other genres of games are more profitable, currently that market will be saturated eventually. The economic law of supply and demand will play its role. The RTS genre is being neglected by the AAA corpos, which actually gives a chance for other studios to work on. The RTS genre light would once again shine upon us. Who will manage to
Retake our homeworld. And with it, our legacy.
Only time will tell. Thank you for watching up to the end. It means a lot. Do you agree or disagree with what was said? Hope in seeing you in the comment section below. And until next time, adios.